Here's you. Hello. Hello, Nasi.
Are you Murli?
Yes.
Hi. Martha.
Good to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
So, what have you got?
So, ये script है हमारा. The film is about big energy projects and their impact
SuryaGanga. Story on the epic conflict between India's land, energy, water, and people. क्या ये? Rivers, people. What is this to do with energy?
So, different energy sources के अलग-अलग impacts होते हैं on environment, on people.
Eric, come on.
And that is what
This is not the way to tell a story. हाँ? ये कोई तरीका है कहानी बोलने का? Where's the glory? Where's the India growth story? हाँ जी?
लेकिन we are talking about all that also, you know, industrial growth and
Yes, really, you environmentalists. क्या बोलोगे आप? ये मत बनाओ, वो मत बनाओ. Go green. You know, sorry, girl, this is not for me. I'm not doing this. What's all this?
ये hard drive है. This is where we have shot and cut the footage so far. आप देखेंगे?
Okay, ठीक है, दिखाइए.
It is easy to fall in love with a river. Any river. This is Ganga. Years ago, my family and I used to holiday by this river at the foothills of the Himalayas. One evening, sitting on the ghats, my mother had said that she had never dreamt of being by this river and that this was one of the most tranquil times of her life. As my child grew, it was time for her to experience Ganga, about which she had heard so many stories. Only, we couldn't find the river. We learned that a number of hydroelectric dams had been built upstream, and so for most part of the year, up in the Himalayas, the river Ganga, along with her many tributaries, didn't flow anymore. The little one had questions.
You said it is a furious river. Where did all the water go? And if the river is not there, why read stories about it?
We had to get some answers. So my brother Marthan and I set out to find what was really going on and why.
See, India's hydropower accelerated in 1990s, and after that it has continued to remain on a high growth rate. And in that era, there were demands for more and more resources, including electricity. So there was a push for more hydropower projects. It started at that time, but the movement really accelerated starting from the first years of this millennia. The central government was an engine for this kind of push for big hydro. They wanted to set up, within a time frame, 50,000 megawatt of hydropower.
Look, Mama, so many rivers.
The Indian subcontinent covers an area of over 3.2 million square kilometers. Barring a chunk of dry desert in the west, this massive landmass is lush with hundreds of big and small rivers. Three major river systems, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, and the Ganga, begin up here in the Himalayas. In 2013, at the time we began making this film, there was no clear defined number of hydropower dams planned on the Ganga River basin.
Whatever figures are available, one can say that anything between 80 to about 600 projects are likely to be taken up.
Already known to be one of the most polluted rivers, now its basin could become one of the densest dam sites on the planet. So how is the dam made? Is it just a wall with some machinery attached? How does it work? And what do they do with the water? Our next stops, one to Maneri Bhali, a 90 megawatt hydropower dam, and second to one of the country's biggest and most experienced dam building companies.
Wow, nice.
See, what is basically hydropower project is we are converting the hydro energy into power.
Potential energy into electricity.
मैं आपको इसमें बता देता हूँ, इसी का पिक्चर लीजिएगा, ठीक है? तो आपको पूरा बताना है कि कैसे कैसे वेरी बेसिक. ओके सपोज दीज आर द माउंटेन्स. फ्रॉम हियर रिवर originates.
The dam is a wall built across the river. As the river flows into the dam wall, the water level rises. The dam has gates to control this water level. A desilting chamber is built before the dam wall. A tunnel is dug out from this chamber.
ये इनटेक है कंस्ट्रक्शन के समय, क्योंकि बाद में ये आपको नहीं दिखेगा. जो हम दिखा रहे हैं ना वहाँ पे कि पानी नदी से किनारे चला जा रहा है, उसका एक कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहा है इनटेक.
इसके बाद पानी भर जाता है बिल्कुल.
हाँ, बिल्कुल भर जाता है. ये हमारी टनल है.
ये भी अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन.
ये हाँ, क्योंकि उसके बाद तो आपको
अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन, उसके बाद में तो ये बंद हो जाएगी, पानी भरा रहेगा.
मेंटेनेंस कभी लेना होगा तो विच नोबडी विल लाइक. बहुत मतलब डेलिब्रेट सिविल एफर्ट्स आर टेकन केयर इन दिस डिजाइंस. ये आपकी टनल्स है.
What a great idea. हाँ जी, टनल में गंगा. आपको ये पोल्यूट करके दिखाए?
मतलब?
Who will go into a tunnel full of water to shit? Huh? It's a great idea. मैं तो कहता हूँ कि tunnel it all the way. सारे मुल्क के सारे रिवर्स टनल में हो जाने चाहिए. No shit, सुरक्षित. See, I can also write. Not bad, huh? No shit, सुरक्षित. You can borrow it if you like.
Sure. A second tunnel is blasted through the mountains, taking almost all the river water inside it, down towards the powerhouse. At Maneri Bhali Dam, where we were, the river flows through this dark tunnel within the mountains for 8.6 kilometers to reach the powerhouse downstream. Outside, the riverbed is left almost dry throughout. The turbines in the powerhouse use the gushing water to generate electricity, which is then fed into the main grid. Job done. The water is allowed to flow back onto the riverbed.
This is all we have.
If the plan of 80 to 600 big and small dams was carried out, all densely packed like cars in a traffic jam, most of Ganga's waters would be within tunnels, while outside, the river itself would remain dry. But for now, we had found where our river had disappeared.
Wow. इतना बड़ा. You know, Jawaharlal Nehru once said, Indiana dams are the temples of doom.
He said modernity, dams in India are temples of modernity.
Doom, modernity, same thing.
We did find some issues though.
What issues?
Let's see.
जब से हमने ये सुना कि डैम बनने शुरू हो गए, डैम बनने शुरू हो, एक तो हमारे गांव के लोग, क्या सभी लोगों ने बोले कि कैसे है वो डैम, कैसे है वो डैम. हम देखने के लिए जा रहे हैं. गए लोग, अब देखा लोगों के जैसे नीचे ऊपर ही टरोली ही लगी वो बाल्टी मसालों खींच दे समय, तो उन्हें बोले क्या है ये सीख। अब जब ऐसे खंडे मंडे होने लगे
तब आपको ऐसा लगा था कि हमारा बहुत भला होगा, ये
ऐसा सोच रहा है कि क्या आ
रहा है,
हाँ कि इतने काम आ रहा है, किसी को कुछ नौकरी मिलेगा, किसी को कुछ होगा, अच्छा काम हो रहा
है। A public hearing is a process that is part of the due diligence that every dam building authority, private or government, needs to do by law.
होना ये चाहिए कि आपको लोकल लैंग्वेजेस में न्यूज़पेपर में पब्लिश करना चाहिए कि हम इस प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, पब्लिक हियरिंग कर रहे हैं। जब आप बात करते हैं और पब्लिक हियरिंग करते हैं तो आप सारे प्रोजेक्ट का सारा कच्चा चिट्ठा पब्लिक के सामने खोल के रखते हैं कि भाई आपके क्षेत्र में हम आ रहे हैं और हम ये काम करने जा रहे हैं, सरकार ये सोच रही है, इससे हमें ये फ़ायदे होंगे, इससे हमें ये नुकसान होंगे। उनकी भाषा में उनको समझाए जाएँ, उनसे अप्रूवल लिया जाए। मुंशियारी के पास का एक किस्सा था जो मुझ तक पहुंचा था कि पब्लिक हियरिंग के समय कुछ इन सब गांव वालों को इकट्ठा किया कंपनी वालों ने और बोला कि चलो हम भंडारा कर रहे हैं, आप सब आएंगे और भंडारे में भोजन करेंगे। और उन्होंने बोला कि चलिए भाई अच्छा ये हो गया, अब आप भंडारा ख़त्म हो गया भाई साहब, हमें अपनी कंपनी से रीएम्बर्स करना होता है ये अमाउंट, इस पर आप साइन कर दीजिए कि आप लोग आए थे। एंड देन दे फर्निश दैट डॉक्यूमेंट सेइंग दैट सो मेनी पीपल अटेंडेड आवर पब्लिक हियरिंग।
One honest EIA of hydropower project.
None.
Doesn't exist.
In all these years.
Yeah. Show me one honest EIA. You show me an EIA, I will show you what is the problem. The fundamental problems, not just tinkering here and there.
Unfortunately, the way the entire dam discourse is happening in the country, which has no place for the affected people to actually voice their concerns, not just voice their concerns, but be at the decision-making table about their resources. Till the time that's not going to happen, people stopping dams is going to be the way out.
Or the courts.
Or the courts. And that's a very bad thing, because this is confrontation at its highest, and it's especially bad when this confrontation actually has to happen with your own government.
पानी की किल्लत है यहाँ पे?
पानी है,
खत्म हो रखी है। तो अभी आप क्या लगाएंगे यहाँ पे?
अब यहाँ धान बोएंगे।
अच्छा, और पानी कहाँ से आएगा?
नहीं, सूखा है।
सूखा
की
सूखा में हो जाएगा?
हो जाएगा, बारिश हो जाएगी तो खूब होगा। नहीं
हाँ, बारिश होगी तो होगा।
जल सूखा ही है ना सारा, ये सूखा है उसी साथ।
और जो आपकी सिंचित भूमि थी
वो सब उखड़ बनी, अब कहाँ है वो?
कैसे बन गया उखड़?
पानी नहीं,
कहाँ गया वो पानी?
पानी सूख नहीं गया पहले। हाँ, अब डाम की वजह से गए, कहाँ से गए पता नहीं। अब डाम में गए होगा, नीचे और कहाँ जाना था उसने।
लगभग कितना वो था, वो पानी कितना आता था? पानी
पानी तो इतना था, सिंचाई होती थी उसके,
मतलब रुपाई चलती थी उसी पानी
के। मैंने हमारी जो
पर आपने है कि मतलब अब कहीं दाम बढ़ने नहीं देंगे हम कहीं। हम बोला ये एक बात पिछले 2-3 साल पहले बोला उन्होंने हमें खेत दे दो, यहाँ हम यहाँ कुछ भी बना रहे हैं। हम बोले हम बच्चा कोई भी कैसे आदमी आए, हम किसी को खेत नहीं देंगे, चाहे किसी के 1 हो चाहे 2 हो, कि हम इतने पैसे देंगे उतने पैसे। हम पैसों के पैसे कितने साल तक होगी? पैसे 2 साल ले गए हो, 4 साल के लिए हो गए, 5 साल के लिए। खेती तो हमारे कहीं नहीं जाएंगे, हम खाएंगे, हमारे बच्चे खाएंगे, हमारे नाती खाएंगे, हमारे पुत्र खाएंगे। खेती तो हमारे कहीं नहीं जाएंगे, वो खेती अपनी जगह जैसे है वैसे है।
It isn't just farming that gets affected. When a river disappears, it marks the beginning of the end of the culture, the ethos, the very identity of the people living around it. We were filming in January, just days after an important and a most beautifully celebrated harvest festival called Makar Sankranti.
हमारी परंपरा यही है कि हम सुबह 4 बजे उठे, अपने स्नान ध्यान किया, सुबह चले गंगा जी अपने डुबकी लगाना। देवता भी जाते हैं नहाने के लिए, सारे गांव की महिला जाती हैं। आज तक जो थी तो हम पूरे डुबके लगाते थे, बोला नहीं भी 5 कोई 12 लगाते, जैसे कोई समाज जैसी जितनी वो होती ना, कोई 3 लगाता, कोई 5 लगाता, कोई 12 लगा लेता। लेकिन इस बार ऐसा हुआ कि पिछली बार थोड़ा बहुत उन्हें पानी छोड़ भी दिया था वहाँ से उस दिन, इस बार थोड़ा भी नहीं छोड़ा।
इस समय तो उसने एक बूंद भी नहीं छोड़ा गंगा जी का। जहाँ गए कहाँ है पानी, कहाँ है पानी, कहाँ डुबकी लगा रहे थे पानी है ही नहीं। जहाँ पत्थर लग गए। अब क्या करें?
जो हमारी जो पौराणिक प्रथा है वो लुप्त होती जा रही है हमारे देखने से, अभी तक बहुत लुप्त होती जा रही है।
Over the centuries, we have made the river Ganga embrace our dead rather intimately. It is an age-old tradition to cremate bodies and immerse the ashes in her waters. So over millennia, millions of people from across the country have come to this river to do just that. Today, downstream of a dam, when a person dies, the villagers have to write to the dam authorities to release some water so they can cremate their dead. Because it is a dam company that holds the power to control the water.
नहीं छोड़ा नहीं ना दे, नहीं मानते, छोड़ा ही नहीं ना दे। जब हम पत्थर लेके थी हमारे गंगा स्नान के लिए भी मृत के लिए भी लेते हम पत्थर, तब जब नहीं भेजते वो नहीं गंगा नदी छोड़ता ही नहीं वो।
On the day we left, an old woman from the village died. The villagers cremated her by the Ganga. No water was released.
Listen, I'm going to write about this judgment because it's just so fantastic. It's just amazing, and I hope it sets precedences throughout the country. It will.
We learned that the Ganga river basin wasn't alone. The rivers flowing in northeastern India were meeting a similar fate, if not more dramatic.
This is the Brahmaputra river system with three of its important tributaries which come together to form the Brahmaputra in Assam in Dibrus-Saikhowa National Park. One is the Lohit river system, then is the Dibang river system, then is the Siang river system. Let's take an example of Dibang Valley or the Siang district, where you have the lower Siang Dam coming up. Just downstream is a very, very beautiful sanctuary. It's called the Deering Sanctuary, which then flows out into the Dibrus-Saikhowa National Park. In a single day, in lean season, when the flows are low, here hydropower will be generated because of the sheer amount of water which you will need to impound for the entire day and then release it for 2 hours or 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening to generate hydropower. But these are big rivers, these are huge rivers. The entire channel itself defies our perception of rivers. It's braided, it goes on for 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers. That's how these rivers behave and have evolved. Now, when you hold it back, when Lower Siang Dam and Upper Siang Dams and Siang Valley Dams right to Siom, they hold back water and they would release the water in a gush. The entire level difference in one day at Deering Sanctuary, which is about 30 kilometers downstream of the last dam on Siang, that's Lower Siang, would be more than 20 feet. 20 feet.
This is on a daily basis?
This is on daily basis. So in winter, what will happen to the river is that it will behave in drought, in distress for 22 hours, and it will have the highest of its monsoon flows for 2 or 3 hours. This is a situation which is happening nearly everywhere. It's happening in Siang, it's happening in Dibang, it's happening in Lohit. You can't choke a person and then say that, but we released him after 1 day.
But if we talk specifically about fish, then typically you'll have fish that live on the bottom of the river, then fish that live in the middle of the river, and fish that live at the surface. That's in simple terms. Usually they will be in that position because that's where they get their food. So the fish are adapted to fill the ecological niche, let's say it like that. When you dam a river, instantly you change the whole ecology of the river. The fish which previously were there, either they have to adapt or they die out. I know from a scientist colleague who's done work in a dam where the river impoundment was put in place maybe 30, 40 years ago. When he samples fish in the dam, he finds around 20 species of fish. When he goes into the river upstream, sampling in the natural river, he finds 200 species of fish. Something has gone very wrong with that environment, clearly.
The impact of dams on fish is something we've absolutely not studied. We don't want to go there. Throughout the country, the impacts have been heartbreaking. We don't want to build fish ladders. We don't want to discuss fish ladders. We don't want to discuss any of these possible interventions which may hold some promise.
Large hydro is often a very alluring part of the mix. Once you make the intervention in the river system, so long as the water flows, those turbines are going to spin and money will be made. Large projects tend to invite corruption. You see this in pockets all throughout the world. So government interests that are approving these are also liable to personally benefit, or at least politically benefit, from so much money, billions of dollars moving through their coffers. These are the kinds of alluring elements of the economy that are pushing this large dam boom. And again, what is most necessary is to stop and say, wait, what are we trying to grow? What is this electricity used for? At least be honest and suggest that it's about further industrial expansion. And let's not hide behind this greenwashing that this is somehow sustainable, that more dams will lead to a greener and brighter future, and that all boats will somehow rise, that the poor will somehow benefit.
We drove up and down the Ganga river basin and found that the intense developmental activity was taking its toll on not just the river but the mountains as well. Around construction sites of these massive developmental projects, as the earth below trembled due to continuous blasting and absorbed water from the reservoirs, massive chunks of land had broken away, houses had been ripped open, entire villages had sunk. The mountain face seemed brittle and dangerously unstable. All along the river, scars of old and recent landslides passed by too close and frequent for comfort. And then there was that threat one rarely talked about.
The seismological threat is very real, and this is conceded even by the developers.
And so everywhere from a main frontal thrust north 200 kilometers to the Sutia zone, the boundary between Indian rocks and Asian rocks, this fault, it's not a vertical line through the earth, it's a very gently dipping line through the earth. So everywhere along this belt is underlain by a huge fault. This is an old picture now, but it shows where the big earthquakes had happened in historic memory, 1950 in Assam, 1934 in Nepal, much bigger than the Kathmandu earthquake. And it shows the size of earthquakes that we expect along the Himalayan front. That's to say, we do expect earthquakes the size of the 1950 earthquake, the size of the 1934 earthquake, to happen periodically along this front.
So when you say big earthquake, what are we talking about?
A magnitude 8. Okay. Magnitude 8 or larger, yes.
So all the big red bars, those are 8 and plus?
That's right. They come up to an 8, yes. And we're certain those will happen because we're certain those have happened.
There is every reason to believe that these dams and projects should be cited far more carefully.
Unfortunately, a proper realistic analysis of these dams have not been done, although the engineers who have been designing these dams, and quite unethically, they were also the advisors to the government, so they were not only providers of designs, but they also advised the government, and they were on all the committees. They convinced the government of the day that whatever they had designed was safe enough, although no serious analysis has been done.
It was becoming clear that the odds were stacked up high against big dams in the Himalayas.
Because you are going into inaccessible areas and difficult to access areas, your costs in those areas will be higher than the other areas. Secondly, see, the climate change is also making, they realize, the water flow unpredictable, and the whole hydropower generation depends on that. Thirdly, they also realize, whether they don't accept it publicly, that the chances of disasters are going up of hydropower projects during construction phase particularly, but even subsequently.
ये आदमी है ये फंस गया वो नहीं निकल सकता वो कहाँ निकल सकता है यार वो अब नहीं निकलेगा वो फिलहाल
June 2013 marked a shift in the hydropower discourse in the country. Cloudbursts are not new in the Himalayas. Only this time, the millions of tons of dam and mountain debris that had been dumped all along the basin turned the water flow into a monstrous deluge. So we went in. The riverbed had risen almost everywhere, at some places over 50 to 65 feet. During the cloudburst, part of a glacier broke away and crashed into a mountain lake, which then emptied itself into Kedarnath Valley. The raging floodwaters then headed downstream for Lanco's 76 megawatt Fata Byung Dam in Sitapur, choking its diversion tunnels with tons of silt and boulders. The torrent then flattened the barrage before moving down to Kund, the site of L&T's Singori Bhatwari plant. L&T's powerhouse was completely wiped out.
सुबह कटा हुआ था रात को नीचे वाला बैग
ये हुआ क्यों? बारिश के चलते हुआ?
बारिश भी हुई और भी आगे जेपी डैम है इसका इसका गेट नहीं खोलने से तो पूरा भर गया यहाँ से पूरा एक साथ आ गया पानी। ये तो उसका गेट खुलता है ना तो पानी कम कम आता है, इतना पानी से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता।
गेट नहीं खोला
एक साथ खोल दिया वो टूट गया, टाइम नहीं लगा,
बैग बंद ही रखा ना पहले
पूरा पानी क्योंकि अगर पानी भर कुछ जमा रहता कुछ आता तो इसमें कोई फर्क
बाद में उसका प्रेशर रोक नहीं पाया, वो तो वो फट
पूरा एक साथ ही आया
जहाँ से हाँ जैसे नेशनल हाईवे रोड था उस साइड से फट गया वो, तो तब वो एक साथ फ्लैट आ गया। ये लगातार बहुत जोर से ही था इसका जो बेग था,
12 घंटा जोर से ही चला।
ये ऐसे नहीं था पहले एक तरह की एक बार बादल फट गया 10-15 मिनट के लिए आता था, नहीं ये तो लगातार जब चल रहा था चल रहा था, ये तो देखने वाला नजारा था।
The dams at Srinagar, Dhauli Ganga, Moti Ghat, Madhya Maheshwar, Asi Ganga 1 and 2, Maneri Bhali 1 and 2 suffered damages as well.
2 टर्बाइन यहाँ भाई और जहाँ बांध बन रहा वहाँ से भी पता नहीं कितनी बार जेसीबी पता नहीं क्या क्या बैठे।
नहीं पर ये तो बहुत महंगा सामान भाव, ये तो बीएचएल की पूरी मशीन जो अब लगनी थी।
400 मेगावाट का विष्णु प्रयाग ये जोशीमठ से आगे जो है उस विष्णु प्रयाग को तो ऐसे भर दिया अलग जेपी का जो, और साथ में किनारे की जमीन काट दी है।
उनका डैम यहाँ छूट गया और रास्ता नदी उधर से,
मैंने जहाँ नहीं दी जाएगी इनको अपना डैम लेके जाना पड़ेगा ऐसे।
Nowadays it is very difficult to construct a hydropower project. You very well know that because of eco-sensitive zone, because of NGOs and all that. So we have to protect them. Because of the barge. No. It is totally foreign funded. All these agitation and all that. Hydro is nothing to do with that. With barge.
Future of this technology is very bleak, and if you If we realize the total costs that we are paying as a society for any one of these projects, then there should be no question of such projects going ahead.
Damn it!
You still think so?
Of course. How else do we make power?
Well, coal hai. Most of the developed nations, they generate electricity with coal. And so it is in India.
Brilliant. Then coal it is then. Coal is the goal.
Not exactly, but let's watch.
जलदार में चना नीमुरत
Energy and water now seem deeply entwined. More questions cropped up. How do rivers get affected when electricity is made with coal? Where is coal mined? And then what do we do with it?
This is the general structure of a coal field. So while drilling, we found that coal layers are at a depth of say 200 meters here, whereas here it is only 25 meters.
Which means either we scoop the coal out from just below the surface by a method called open cast mining, or dig tunnels and drill it out from deep under the ground. We had entered the heart of central Indian coalfields. The color of the soil looked different. Cargo trains looked busier. Everything looked very industrial.
How many years of formation are we talking about?
It is several million years. It is several million years.
Out of death comes life, as Lord Shiva said. Renewable is the future.
Shiva said that? Oh, no. This is coal. Coal is not renewable. Coal, you burn it, poof, it goes into the air, it never comes back to its original state.
Coal,
धुआं बनकर ही घूमता रहता है.
Coal is renewable. It is renewable. आप बताएं, what will happen to you when you die?
पता नहीं, I'll be dead, right?
Yes. और आप दफना दिए जाओगे, and in a million years, you will become a fossil. My friend, you will become coal. Renewable. Anything else?
There's some more.
A lot of them are in the eastern and central part of India. Chhattisgarh has huge deposits, Odisha has large deposits, then you have Jharkhand which has large deposits. Some parts of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh border, these are the Singrauli coal fields and nearby coal fields. And then you have West Bengal, and then you have northeast, you have Meghalaya, and you have some other coal deposits in the northeast.
All the electricity that we have, it's a huge percentage that coal gives, right?
Yeah, around 71%. Yes.
So, how much coal reserves do we have?
In India, we have a total reserve of 301 billion tons of coal, as per the present exploration, and it is increasing.
What this means is, at the current rate of use, the country's coal reserves would last almost 500 years.
That's brilliant. Black gold. अब हमें सुपर पावर बनने से कोई नहीं रोक सकता.
I wouldn't say that at this point. इस काले पत्थर की कहानी भी थोड़ी वैसी ही है. It is a dark story.
How can it be a dark story when it lights up my house?
Well, world over, coal is being considered dirty energy these days.
अच्छा. Now they tell us. खुद तो अपना कोल जला के आगे निकल गए, अब हमारी बारी आई तो इट हैज बिकम डर्टी एनर्जी. दिस इज ऑल अ कंस्पिरेसी. दे वांट टू कीप अस बैकवर्ड. वो हमें डेवलप करना नहीं देना चाहते. दे वांट टू कंट्रोल अस.
That may not be entirely true, you know.
आप लोग विद दिस फिल्म आप भी ऐसी बातें कर रहे हो. यू आर ऑल्सो एंटी नेशनल्स, यू आर ऑल्सो ट्रेटर्स.
सर आप ये गलत कह रहे हैं.
फंडिंग कहाँ से मिल रही है आपको?
Well, many people are helping in many different ways. ये किसको कॉल कर रहे हैं आप? Wait, you're making serious allegations here. At least पूरी फिल्म तो देख लीजिए.
Are you bugged?
No, I'm not.
What is that? वो क्या रखा हुआ?
ये मेरी क्लिप है. Hair clip
Looks
है.
dangerous.
It's not dangerous. Look, you have to know more about coal and its impacts on the environment and the people the world over. Just India में ही नहीं, everywhere.
All right. दिखाइए.
A lot of the coal that we have is in very thickly forested areas, areas which harbor a lot of wildlife, which harbor rich ecology and biodiversity, which are the areas which provide and recharge groundwater, and of course they are home to many tribal communities. So when you want to mine them, then you have to clear fell these areas and access the coal below the ground. So
in a nutshell, coal is dug out, taken to washeries where it is crushed and washed, then transported to the power plant to be burnt to produce steam to turn the turbines to generate electricity. Throughout this process, coal shares a rather close relationship with water. So we planned our visit during the monsoons to see how intimate this relationship could get.
Come fast, because if some people will come then.
In its various stages of making electricity, from mining till it is burnt, whenever coal debris meets water, it releases a toxic cocktail of heavy metals in our waterways, polluting our rivers, streams, our groundwater, water that we all drink and use on a daily basis. That morning, while the heavy rainstorm kept the guards indoors, we had entered areas that are usually off limits. The mix of coal debris and water was complete. These were not leaks or spills. The plunder was out there in the open with nothing to contain millions of tons of coal sludge from entering our waterways.
क्या कर रहे हैं
अंदर भी ले जा जो बॉसरी है उसके अंदर तो पूरा कोयला का पानी एकदम काला काला दिखेगा. पानी जो है ब्लैक. ऐसे भी तो तुमको दिख ही रहा है.
खान साहब आप आज जो कर रहे हैं ना बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं.
इस रोड से चलिए. किसमें?
राइट.
देखो इधर इस साइड अंदर की ओर दिखाई दे रहा है. देखो दिखा आग दिखा धुआं. देखो यहाँ से दिख रहा है तुमको?
मैं बाहर जाती हूँ.
पहले ले लो जितना लेना. अंदर अंदर एकदम अंदर लो. वो आग वो सब दिख रहा है. और जाओ ऊपर चढ़ो ना.
जा रहे हो भैया.
Oops. Come on fast. ये देखो क्रैक्स. यहाँ देखो यहाँ क्रैक्स दिख रहे हैं. इन सबों से गैस निकल रहा है.
ये भी सब्सिडेंस एरिया है.
लेकिन जाना इसलिए नहीं है कि इसका जो गैस है तुरंत फेटल है. आदमी बेहोश हो जाएगा नहीं तो मर जाएगा. ये पूरा गैस का जो है.
कितना इनहेल करने से?
1 इनहेल. लंबा इनहेल ले लिया खत्म.
मतलब if the winds change we should run. हाँ.
ये सामने.
ओह राइट.
यहाँ जाके ले सकती हो. ये ले लो. ज़्यादा अंदर नहीं जाना. गैस ना लेना.
I'll stop breathing.
वो फोटो ले लो. गैस. सब फायर एरिया जहाँ पे हम लोग खड़े हैं।
ये क्रैक्स वगैरह जो हुए पड़े हैं,
हाँ,
ये धंसने वाले हैं।
सब बढ़ जाएंगे ग्रेजुअली। वो देखो धुआं निकला एक और सामने, ब्लैक, इधर इधर।
ओह, ये क्या हुआ सडनली?
ब्लास्ट हुआ नीचे,
आवाज तो नहीं है।
नेचुरल ब्लास्ट
कि सब्सिडेंस
अपने आप जब फटता है, आग लगा हुआ है, ऑल ऑफ सडन गैस रिलीज हुआ। 2 बार तो तुम अभी सामने ही देख ली, अभी एक बार पहले निकला था, फिर अभी निकला। ये सब अलग अलग वेरिएशन, 20,000 तक चला जाता है ppm।
कितना होना चाहिए?
अरे वो तो 0.2 से भी कम होता है। 20,000 ppm है, पार्ट्स पर मिलियन
of carbon
monoxide, and as well as sulfur dioxide, hydrogen, other gases is also there.
Last 10 years से ज़्यादा हुआ है। उसके पहले टॉलरेबल था?
टॉलरेबल तो नहीं था, बट क्या है कि अब जैसे जैसे माइनिंग एक्टिविटी बढ़ते जा रही है ना, वैसे वैसे तुम्हारा एक्सपेंशन ऑफ फायर, सब्सिडेंस, ये सारा कुछ हो रहा है, एंड ह्यूज लॉस टू नेचुरल इन्वायरमेंट। ये माइनिंग एक्टिविटी में ये है कि इसको आप अगर माइनिंग कर रहे हो तो आपको उसको रिहेबिलिएट करना है, प्लांटेशन करना है, कहीं कुछ नहीं, जस्ट यू सी सब जगह ओवरबर्डन करके छोड़ दिया है। वैसे जहाँ माइनिंग आपकी ख़त्म हो गई वहाँ उसको डंप कीजिए, डंप करके फिर उसको सॉइल को रीजनरेट कीजिए, ऐसा प्लांटेशन वगैरह कीजिए, कुछ नहीं।
But they are required by law, right?
हाँ, लॉ में तो सारा कुछ है।
And that's the reason वो इतना secretive रखते हैं, क्योंकि follow नहीं करते हैं पूरा।
Now Indian coal is typically has very high ash content. It can be up to 35-40% also. The idea is that you have these washeries. I mean, washeries is a little simplified way of understanding it. It's not that you put coal in water and wash off the rust. It is a mix of physical, chemical processes by which these impurities are separated out. And what comes out is called clean coal, which is a misnomer because it's not really clean. It's slightly better than the earlier ones. You know, say from 35%, it may go down to 20% or 22%. Many of the washeries are supposed to be zero liquid discharge, so this is not supposed to go out. But we have seen blatantly this water is just let down into rivers and into streams, which has very serious impact.
We drove around a power plant which for some reason guarded itself like a fortress. In a power plant, the washed coal is burnt to generate electricity. Well, not just electricity.
We are generating ash in terms of millions of tons. I think last year we probably generated some 160 million tons. Just to put a figure on that, I think it is more than 2 times the total municipal solid waste generated in the country.
नहीं, 1 मिनट, उनको बुलाएंगे। उनसे पूछना था कि कितना ट्रक ले आते हैं दिन में?
एक दिन में 700।
आप कितनी बार अप एंड डाउन करते हैं?
हम लोग 3 बार 4 बार करते हैं।
ओह, पूरे दिन में?
हाँ, पूरे दिन।
और इसका कैपेसिटी कितना है ट्रक का?
इसका 15 टन, मतलब जैसे है ना 15 टन तो इसका वेट रहता है।
चलो, ये तो यहाँ से अब आगे बढ़ते जाएगा, ढलाते जाएंगे, आगे बढ़ता जाएगा।
ढक जाएगा
ये पूरा जो धंस गया है,
जो खदान है ना जितना,
हाँ,
वो सब ढक जाएगा।
वो ढक जाएगा। अच्छा अच्छा, बढ़िया।
हम लोग निकलते हैं।
हाँ।
If you go to coal mining areas and areas where coal is burned, it is supposed to be disposed in a wet process in the ash ponds.
This you could just go and film?
Yeah.
Which location is this?
This is Chennai, not Chennai. See the size of the pond. There is only one part of the pond. There is another behind this, another behind it.
What happens to the groundwater in and around these places?
All contaminated. That's the big thing. Now this is supposed to be lined. It's not lined at all.
Line means
the plastic niche dalo. There's no. I mean that requirement also come in only last 8 or 10 years. So you see the consistency. So this is now it falls in, some of the water will evaporate, some will seep in, at some places the ash will dry, then it starts blowing.
No smoking. Ironical.
We don't need cigarette.
We don't need
cigarette.
Everyone's smoking.
Everyone is smoking. अच्छा अच्छा हार्ट वाला भी प्रॉब्लम है आपको?
थोड़ा तो है।
है तो हार्ट वाला प्रॉब्लम। सांस वाला भी दिक्कत है ना आपको?
सांस वाला दिक्कत है।
कितना साल से आपको सांस वाला दिक्कत?
We read that there are a huge number of deaths. This is all over India figure. 100,000 or something that died due to respiratory problems because of. So what are they dying of? Is it pneumoconiosis or is
No,
it
that respiratory pneumoconiosis is related to the coal dust, and also coal dust gives rise to a disease known as COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
We listened for over 2 hours as the doctors listed out an endless account of diseases caused just by living around the coal belt. And we were talking about people in the millions.
So the deaths are caused because of...
Environment is alien. It is not natural. The worker suffers from different aspects of diseases. They may be depressed. Most of them are suffering from peptic ulcer because of the hard work job and because of frustration. And then heart disease, hypertension is very common here. The immunity of the workers, immunity of the people surrounding areas comes down. So autoimmune disease, the incidence of rheumatoid arthritis is very high here. It's very, the incidence of leprosy, as I told you, like tuberculosis, increased because cancer is related to the duration of the dust exposure. Yeah, it affects the GIT, I mean our gastrointestinal tract.
The heavy metals.
Yeah, heavy metals. That affects it can lead to cancers of the GIT tract, it can lead to cancer of the kidney also. It leads to cancer of the urinary bladder. Nowadays in India, the average lifespan of individual is around 73 years. Or he can die a decade or 2 decades before.
We headed out looking for underground mines. We were also eager to see what groundwater really looked like down there.
You expect a mine and you find a cricket field.
Before being selected in Indian teams.
You can clear this one. Are we going in?
If you want to take
Yeah,
a snap,
sure.
don't mention the place, okay?
No. Okay.
ये बैरिकेडिंग है, यहाँ तक तो जा ही सकते हैं. Not beyond that.
ज़्यादा दूर मत है, काली लग जाएगा.
ये भी काम कर रहा है? अच्छा, इसके अंदर गए हैं लोग?
अभी फिर जाएंगे लोग.
कितने बजे जाएंगे?
बहुत तक जाएंगे वो.
घर जैसा है अंदर में.
अंदर एकदम है.
ले चल के 10 मिनट के लिए सब. अरे जाइए अंदर 10 मिनट के घूम के चले जाते हैं. मैनेजर साहब है साथ हो जाएगा कोई दिक्कत नहीं.
चला गया ना.
लोडर का मतलब आपका है कोयला ढोना. हमारा काम है सर कोयला ढोना. हम लोग कोयला ढोना.
हाँ. ये कितना दूर अंदर जाता है?
इससे हम लोग जा सकते हैं कहाँ? बाग जी की खतर में भी चल जाएंगे. You can go around 12-10 kilometers inside. So this is a water pump. This is being operated 24/7. Otherwise, the whole mine will be submerged.
4000 BPM.
4000 गैलन पर मिनट ये इसका मेक अप पानी बनता है।
इतना पानी यहाँ से प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है। शिफ्ट कब खत्म हो रहा है?
जी 4 बजे सर।
4 बजे।
तो आपके पिताजी भी यही काम करते थे?
नहीं, पिताजी हमारे यहाँ सुपरवाइजर थे।
अच्छा
जी।
लेकिन ऊपर थे नीचे थे?
दोनों
थे।
सुपरवाइजर।
तो आप नहीं, तो मतलब मैं ये कह रही थी कि वो भी कोयले की खदान में काम करते हैं, आप भी करते हैं। आपके बच्चे क्या सोचते हैं? वो क्या बनेंगे बोलते हैं, या कुछ बोलते हैं कि हम आगे चल के ये करेंगे या वो करेंगे? शहर जाएंगे।
हाँ सर, ये तो उनकी तमन्ना है, जाएंगे, करेंगे, पढ़ेंगे। अब आगे क्या भविष्य बनाएंगे उनके ऊपर निर्भर है।
चाहेंगे कि पापा को हटा ही दें वहाँ से, टाटा से अंडरग्राउंड तो जाने नहीं देंगे। मैं कहीं अगर लाइनअप हो जाते हैं हम तो उनको नहीं जान देंगे अंडरग्राउंड।
हमारी जो भी शक्ति है, यही चाह रहे हैं कि ये लोग पढ़े लिखें और अपनी तमन्ना की माइंस में न जाए। अपना तमन्ना है कि ये लोग माइंस में न जाए।
Why should I care about the future generations? What have they ever done for me?
ग्रूचो मार्क्स। ग्रूचो मार्क्स, उसने भी यही बोला था।
हाँ बिल्कुल सही बोला था। कौन है?
एक कॉमेडियन।
Why are you doing this? This is such a great country. We have had thousands of great rulers. We invented yoga, zero, the calculator.
Not the calculator.
Now you give me this. Dams नहीं, coal नहीं, nuclear नहीं। इतने अंधेरे टनल में ले जा रहे हो आप जिसके एंड में कोई लाइट ही नहीं है।
एक्चुअली लाइट है, एक बिग ब्लाइंडिंग लाइट है।
Energy is mostly about policy. It's not about technology, really. It's not about what makes sense for the population. Traditionally, it's been about policy. In 1991, India had 5 million phones. Today, there's 1 billion telephones in India. Just 20 years. Now, how did India do this? How much did it cost the government? Well, it cost the government nothing. All the government had to do is change the policies. And the beauty of cell phones is that it did not need a grid. And that's the same thing with solar.
There are larger societal benefits of renewable energy, which accrues to the society as a whole in terms of cleaner air, in terms of energy security, in terms of lesser price volatility, because it does not have any fuel cost associated to it. So once you install a wind turbine or a solar plant, then for 20-25 years, it's going to give you energy at a fixed price.
पहले हम गांव की मीटिंग लिए
तो ये पैनल कितना
24 पैनल है, यानी कि एक पैनल 240 वाट का है, तो ये पूरे 24 है, तो उनके 12-12 के सीरीज में बना दिया, उनका डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन उधर कर दिया है।
अच्छा।
वो कंट्रोल रूम में उधर से जो आउटपुट एनर्जी मीटर का जो आता है, यानी कि तो पूरा अंडरग्राउंड है, तो पूरा अंडरग्राउंड से लेके हॉस्पिटल तक आते हैं।
ये हर एक घर के एक हैं?
हाँ, हर घर के लिए अलग अलग बिठाया है।
और ये वायर सब हर एक घर में जाता है?
हाँ, हर एक घर में। उधर से वो ये आउटपुट निकल के इनपुट इधर आते हैं, आउटपुट निकल के यहाँ ऊपर से, और ऊपर से वो हर घर के लिए अलग जाते हैं।
Is laying down a grid very expensive? But we have about 80-90% we have covered.
Yeah. Most of the villages, over 95% of the villages have the grid reaching there. So there's a distinction here. So when you say the electricity lines have reached the village, does not mean every house in that village has electricity. And that's why the discrepancy that 400 million Indians still do not have electricity.
I think there's an opportunity here to leapfrog the grid entirely. And I believe that most Indians and most rural Indians, their energy needs are going to be best served by clean distributed energy models. Instead of centralized generation and expensive distribution and transmission, local generation and local distribution is really the model.
It's a common myth that solar power is only for, one or two lights. We have our whole school, 80 plus classrooms, more than 4,500 children, and the area is over 8-acre area, and we have all that being powered by our solar power plant. We have ACs, air conditioners, we have lifts, and we have close to 2 to 3 fans per classroom, more than 3 tube lights per classroom. So it's just not that you're just lighting one light or one fan with solar, but the whole school is actually powered with solar. We have more than 6 blocks here which take in power from the plant. The plant is intelligent enough to decide if it's a cloudy day, then we take it from Bescom, and when the load is less and we're generating good enough, we export it back to Bescom. And Bescom compensates that in our next electricity bill.
Oh, it spreads out. Nice. 400 panels.
Even a first standard child will know, but a 9th standard will probably give you more details on it. But everybody is aware that there is something like this in the school. Probably once a week, the grade comes, sees everything, and actually experiences, because we believe that it's just not talking. We have to actually show them everything.
If you really want solar to become part of the energy future of India, then you have to think about how you can have decentralized solar projects work. But then the challenge comes is that nobody has an effective model, because everybody has done solar energy in small little bits. They're cute solutions, okay, but not of the scale that you need them to be. And so now the big challenge is to scale it up.
So think of the grid as the internet, where anybody can come in and be an internet service provider, where anyone can be a user and anyone can be a seller. If you do that, if you think about the grid in an open way, you are basically opening up the energy business to 1 million entrepreneurs to come in and put up solar on 1 billion rooftops, provide storage, provide energy generation, and sell it, and also plug it into the grid.
ये क्या कर रहे हैं सब? This is madness. ऐसी तबाही. This will be the end of life, the end of the universe, everything. The sun is the source of life. And here these crazy fellows are sucking out all its energy. This will be catastrophic.
Calm down.
We've got to stop them. No.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं होने वाला.
How do you know? How?
Well, the solar panels. Look how shiny they are. They are going to reflect it all back. These solar panels will keep the sun alive and burning for billions of years.
Shiny to hai, but just make sure they give it all back to the sun. After all, we have to think of future generations also.
You're right.
Where are the markets which will actually reach energy to poor? If the markets existed to reach energy to poor, you wouldn't have millions in darkness today.
So the first thing that governments should do is to stop subsidizing and protecting big energy companies. Stop subsidizing. And I'll give you one example. India today, according to the International Monetary Fund, gives $30 billion a year to the fossil fuel industry in subsidies, right? If you just stop subsidizing fossil fuel and put that money into solar, you would give 500 million people in India access to power for the next few decades, right?
We were speaking with renewable energy entrepreneurs, authors, manufacturers, and planners. An excited bunch of people who were looking into a future where our climate and freshwater systems could heal and sustain themselves. In most of our conversations, one common thought was, if our governments have the political will to make the right choices now, the switch to clean energy could happen very quickly.
What are the big policy changes you want to see any government make to boost solar?
Get out of the energy business. There is no reason today in modern energy. Modern energy is about technology. It's closer to telecommunications or cell phones or internet provision. In the 20th century, there were a lot of governments who were in the telecom business, who were in the telephony business. But now there aren't because it's essentially a technology business. So the government should get out of the energy business. It should not own the transmission, it should not own the distribution, it should not own the grid.
They're publicly traded companies, but they're not used to really being dynamic and competitive and changing the way people do in the technology business. The way the half-life of a product is 18 months, so you're constantly thinking forward. These businesses are like moving the Titanic. They don't even steer. They just do the same thing. Either you're government agency or you're a for-profit company. You can't be both.
For solar entrepreneurs, government policy affects real issues on the ground.
So unless you have total clarity, you have to kind of figure out, okay, this is what I want to give to these people. This is how much conventional electricity I have right now. And this is how much I need to supplement it through renewable sources. And therefore, I have an integrated plan. Otherwise, how will it work? If you say that, okay, you go and do renewables and then 2 years later somebody else says, no, now let's improve the convention. It's a recipe for disaster, right? Because then there's always this fear that if I go and put in and tomorrow, if some person comes in and says something else, a system which is going to recover its money from in 25 years, you need policy certainty.
आपने सोलर कुकर के बारे में सुना है? वो उसमें बनता है सौर ऊर्जा से, प्रकाश से बनता है ना.
Renewable energy today is cheaper than electricity provided by the grid in hundreds of markets around the world. Even with all the subsidies that conventional energy industry gets, solar and wind come out cheaper.
You are seeing a huge movement of people that are using water as the main argument against coal and fossil fuel industries, not actually climate change or pollution.
We're at a point in human history now where we cannot afford to continue along this path of dirty energy. We see the many ways in which it's actually undermining our progress, undermining our prosperity. 100% renewable energy really must be the goal. Really must be the goal.
ये पंखा हमें ठंडा रखेगा ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के समय.
ये विंड टर्बाइन है. इट जनरेट्स इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हवा से.
हवा से? और ये हवा इस बड़े पंखे की तरफ फूंकेगा कौन?
इट्स अ मिस्ट्री.
We seem to have come to the end of one road and the beginning of another. Clearly, we had a choice.
I think in every sphere of life, Earth democracy means that wherever the Earth provides the resources and wherever people have a need, whether it be for food or water or energy, it be as decentralized as possible.
We can't let our limitations be our convenience. It's our limitation that we can't study or we can't respond to the daily nature of the river flows.
If you define your basic objective of the power sector saying that first I want everybody to have electricity for their basic needs, then the whole sector would be structured differently.
Solar is a solution of the past, solar has been a solution of the present, and solar is a solution of the future.
What I know is we humans are way more powerful than we want to believe. We all like being small. We like having enemies. Look what they're doing. We like being able to point fingers because then I don't have to look in the mirror. Looking in the mirror is a lot scarier. Being accountable is a lot harder.
काय चाललंय इकडे? यहाँ क्या चल रहा है? ये वल्ली और मार्तंड कौन है?
हमें
हे ये क्या हो रहा है?
आपको पुलिस स्टेशन बुलाया है।
आप फिल्म बना रहे हो? वो भी देश के खिलाफ?
हाँ, फिल्म तो बना रहे हैं, लेकिन ये देश के खिलाफ कैसे हुआ? Naseer, you got to tell them. आपने तो देखा है ये फिल्म?
I haven't seen anything.
This film is not about.
It's not my film.
It's about giving power to the people.
देखिए, आप इन सब में मत पड़िए। चलो पुलिस स्टेशन।
चलो।
चलो।
Do something.
ये हेयर क्लिप चेक कर लो।
चलो।
Not my film. I don't know anything.
Trumpet call drew the attention of them all.
Oh, beasts of Bengal gathered round. Though in our search for common ground I would not dream of unanimity, at least our views may reach proximity. I speak to you as one whose clan has served and therefore studied man. He is a creature mild and vicious, practical-minded and capricious, loving and brutal, sane and mad, the good as puzzling as the bad. The sticky center of this mess is an uneasy selfishness. He rips our flesh and tears our skin for cloth without, for food within. The leopard spots are his to wear. Our ivory unknots his hair. The tragopan falls to his gun, he shoots the flying fox for fun. The black bear dances to his whim, my own tame cousins slave for him. Yet we who give him work and food have never earned his gratitude. He grasps our substance as of right, to quench and spur his appetite. Nor will he grant us truce or space to rest secure in any place. Sometimes he worships us as gods and sings of us at Eisted Fords, or fashions fables, myths and glories to celebrate our deeds and glories. And yet, despite this fertile fuss, when has he ever cared for us? He sees the planet as his fief, where every hair or leaf or drop or seed or blade or grain of sand is destined for his mouth and hand. If he is thirsty, we must thirst, for of all creatures, man comes first. If he needs room, then we must fly, and if he hungers, we must die. Think what will happen when his scheme to tame our valley and our stream begins to thrust its way across these gentle slopes of fern and moss with axe, explosive and machine. Since rhododendron logs burn green, they'll all be chopped for firewood or logged and smuggled out for good. As every bird and mammal knows, when the road comes, the forest goes. And let me say this to the trout. The bamboo will be slashed, no doubt, and what the tragopan and I delight to eat will burn and die. But what will happen to your stream? Before the reservoir, your dream of endless space can come about, the soot and filth will snuff you out. What tolls for us is your own bell. And similarly, let me tell the leopards who may fancy here a forest full of fleeing deer after your happy passing slaughter, you too will have to flee from water. You will be homeless like us all. It is this fate we must forestall. So let me say to every single endangered denizen of Bengal, we must unite in fur and feather, for we will live or die together.